All right, let's talk about some news that was made this week by one of our favorite Democrats in all of politics, Stacey Abrams. Yeah. So, the former Georgia candidate for governor announced that she will pass on the 2020 presidential race in order to focus all of her efforts on Fair Fight 2020, an organization that she founded to fight voter suppression and expand democracy. Abrams told the New York Times, quote, "There are only two things stopping us in 2020, that people have a reason to vote and that they have a right to vote. I've decided to leave it to a whole bunch of other people to make sure that they have a reason to vote." Tommy, what do you think of Abrams' decision? Is focusing on voter suppression potentially more impactful than either running for president or running for Senate in Georgia, which she also passed on?
Good question. Well, I mean, look, I think entering the presidential campaign right now would be a very bad idea for literally anyone, even someone as talented as Stacey Abrams, because you just need time to like build an organization, raise money, like do all the things you need to do.
Right.
A lot of us would love to see her be a United States senator, but she said she didn't want the job, so that's totally fine. Now, I think the key point is that she would be governor if not for voter suppression, right? And so the fact that someone as savvy and smart and amazing as her is going to run an organization that could try to prevent voter suppression around the country is enormously important for almost everyone running in every state. So, you know, the only thing that I have been thinking about is, like, she said she wants to raise $5 million. Like, why not 10? Why not 15? Everyone in this theater right now could help her build the biggest organization we've ever seen. So, yeah, I think it's an incredibly important job, and I'm glad she's taking it on.
Yeah, and I should just say, so Abrams' organization it's basically going to provide technical and financial assistance to Democratic voter operations in 20 states. Like you said, it's going to cost $4 to $5 million. They're going to help fix inaccurate voter rolls, address shortages of voting machines and provisional ballots, formalize rules around counting absentee ballots. They're even going to help make sure that communities of color are participating in the census. So they're working on everything all over the country, which is really great. Dan, what can Democrats learn from the campaign and the organization that Stacey Abrams built in Georgia? Because we often talk about how, you know, it's really hard to persuade some Obama-Trump voter in the Midwest, but it's going to be a lot easier to actually go out and register voters and expand the electorate. And Stacey Abrams actually did expand the electorate in Georgia. So what can Democrats learn from that?
I think the lessons of Stacey Abrams' campaign, other than running against a corrupt, crooked Secretary of State with access to the voter rolls, is that you start organizing very, very early. You go everywhere. You talk to everyone. There is no pocket of unregistered or unlikely voters that is too small for you to talk to. Stacey Abrams didn't, like, the bulk of the Democratic vote in Georgia is in Cobb County, is Atlanta, but she did more than that. The reason she got more votes than any Democrat in history was she campaigned everywhere.
Yeah. Everywhere
where there was any chance she could get any small handful of votes, she was there. She had an organization getting those people. And I think what she's doing is so important because in Washington, there are skyscrapers full of Republicans whose only job is to fuck up our democracy.
Yeah.
And it is nice that we finally have one person in the Democratic Party who is taking upon herself to recognize that all the things we talk about, universal health care, free college, naming a fucking post office, none of those things will happen unless we fix our democracy.
Yeah.
Right? And that starts in 2020.
So, Jamel, one of Stacey Abrams' achievement in Georgia was turning out a record number of black voters. So she changed the electorate. So you used to, Democrats basically assumed they would have the black vote, and then they would try to get moderate white voters, and that's basically the path in Georgia. Stacey Abrams changed that. She tried to basically expand the electorate, boost black turnout as much as possible, and then she also campaigned in rural areas with plenty of poorer white people. So in the 2016 election, black turnout declined for the first time in 20 years. A lot of this had to do with voter suppression. Some of it had to do with the fact that Barack Obama wasn't on the ballot for the first time in 8 years. What do you think that the Democratic presidential candidates and the party itself has to do in 2020 to match basically what Abrams did in Georgia all over the country?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I think her strategy is sound in the sense of she's not, I mean, while I think flipping voters who may have gone another direction is part of it, but I don't think she emphasized that as much as maybe other candidates might have. I mean, there's a lot of energy, a lot of conversation in this Democratic field about flipping that Trump voter. Well, sometimes you can't negotiate with terrorists, right? So the best way to combat that is to get more people to vote. And a lot of it was just appearing, as you said, appearing in places where people weren't used to having that one-on-one interaction with people, registering and empowering voters who didn't really feel like they were a part of the political process. I mean, I can't speak for all black people, but I will for the purposes of this stage. The choice that most black people made was, okay, I may not be feeling Hillary, but I'm not voting for a racist, so I'm staying home. So you have to get the people who decided to stay home to come out. And what is it that will energize them? What is it that will inspire them? And a lot of what they will be inspired by is feeling some level of connectivity and hope within the candidate. And she tapped into that. And, there's a lot of research that shows that millennial voters, especially black millennial voters, are an untapped resource. And you have to figure out beyond just, okay, saying you'll cancel student loan debt, what is the conversation that you can have with black millennials that will inspire them to be a part of the process? Because the other downside of 2016 is that it made people more disillusioned and made them feel, particularly with, the Russian tampering, as if their votes didn't actually count. Yeah. So now you add the voter suppression to it, and so you have to figure out a way to let people know that you are mining this process, and that's why Stacey Abrams, what she's doing is really important. The Republicans played the long game on voter suppression, okay? And Democrats fell asleep at the wheel, there's no question about it. If people know that there is a concerted effort to try to combat that, I think it will do a lot in regards to connecting with the voters who feel like their vote, quote, doesn't matter.
Yeah, and So Trump, the Trump campaign, apparently already is handing out literature in black barbershops right now. They're doing micro-targeting.
I would love to know who he's sending to a black barbershop.
Can you imagine?
Who is he sending to the black barbershop?
I think we should take half and Silk takes the other half.
We should take a moment to just recognize that they are brave.
Yes.
We don't have to like them, but let's be honest.
I need video because I don't believe that for a minute at all. But go ahead.
But they're doing that. They're micro-targeting on Facebook. They're doing all this digital advertising. Lovett, it doesn't seem like the strategy of the Trump campaign is to win the black vote. They know they can't do that. But it seems like what they're going to try to do what they did in 2016, which is basically say, yeah, we know that you don't like Donald Trump, but the Democrat is bad too. Maybe you should just vote for a third party or stay home. How do Democrats deal with that dynamic, do you think?
Yeah, look, so first of all, one thing just to add on Stacey Abrams is the other thing she did is she ran an incredibly progressive and unabashedly progressive race in Georgia that excited a lot of people and gave people a lot of reason to come out and vote for her, to believe in her. She got out there and she organized, but then she gave them a reason. She gave them a reason to be excited and to help. That's his strategy across the board, and it's sophisticated, and it is to go into every crevice in every community and plant a little seed of doubt, plant a little bit of fear, plant a little bit of hate, plant a little bit of dissatisfaction, and to try to chip away just enough, right? That's part of how he became president, not just by turning out white voters in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, but also doing his best to, and with the help of a lot of misinformation, antagonize black communities, get just enough people to stay home. That's the strategy. That's it. It's there. And he's going to do it again, and it's going to be, and I think sometimes we allow Trump's lack of sophistication to lull us into a sense of security, and I think some of that was in the coverage of 2016 about how, Jared is this wunderkind, and obviously that's stupid because he's not, but, Dan talks about this all the time, just how sophisticated an organization that they're putting together, and I think we underestimate it at our peril. They will be everywhere, and we need to be everywhere too, and we can't take any reliable Democratic vote for granted because we just have to assume, maybe this is going to be a blowout, but we have to assume it's not, which means it's not just about winning the places where we have people, it's about preventing tiny losses everywhere because we'll win or lose on the margins.
Oh.
I think in the mind of the Trump campaign, in an ideal world, they would love to shave 1 or 2% off the African-American vote for the Democratic nominee. That's actually how Bush won in 2004, was overperforming with African-American voters in Ohio. But what he's really doing is, when he campaigns for the black vote, he's not really campaigning, he's really campaigning for the white vote. It is part of a strategy to show white voters that he is not as racist as we say he is. Now, that is undermined every time he opens his mouth.
Right.
But that is that's the idea on the whiteboard. And I mean the term whiteboard.
Well, how do you think that we reach a lot of these voters? Because right now, Dan, you complain about this all the time. Donald Trump is spending an enormous amount of money, his campaign, on digital ads, on Facebook ads. I mean, I remember when we talked to Stacey Abrams and we interviewed her, she was like, the typical strategists in the Democratic Party were telling me in my campaign, oh, you got to be up on TV, you got to be up on TV. And what I did is invested a ton of money in organizing and digital strategy.
Yep.
Do you think that Democrats are heading down that path? Do you think we need to go there faster? This is for you to start screaming about it.
I think that some campaigns, particularly Kamala Harris's campaign, have thought a lot about this, and that's in part because that is her strategy to win the nomination, right? That is the vote she needs if she's going to overtake Warren or Biden, whoever else. But we can't wait to have a nominee because we are not going to have a nominee most likely until June, under the most ideal scenario, June. And so it should be happening right now. And I think what that is...
There's a woman here just gasped.
On a later show, we'll talk about why the increased odds of a brokered convention, but...
Yeah.
No, not tonight.
So I think it's twofold, right? It is organizing that is happening in communities right now. It is not waiting for a nominee or a general election, because normally that organizing starts in the summer and fall of 2016, or of the presidential election year. But it is also digital advertising, because if you think you're going to reach young people, and particularly young people of color, by doing CNN interviews and doing interviews in the New York Times, you have fucking lost your mind.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. If you want to speak to old white people who've already made their decision,
Right.
that's a good way of doing that.
Right.
The other thing that we should just know is that there are some state parties that are doing a better job than others. And I think that the Wisconsin Democratic Party understands that they underperform in Milwaukee and that we need to prioritize sending a bunch of organizers to Milwaukee early and be in those communities early on and not wait till the very end.
Yeah.
Just one stat that I think should just both give people hope and make you want to bang your head against the wall.
Exciting.
Which is Trump won by 70,000 votes across 3 states. That's what made him president. Across the country, there were 4 million people who voted for Barack Obama in 2012 who didn't vote in 2016.
Yeah.
And a lot of studies show that that is a disproportionately large group of people of color, African Americans and Latinos.
And I mean, I think when you think about that population, there's this feeling, and you see it on Twitter, you see it on cable sometimes, that if Democrats just adopt very progressive policies, these voters will suddenly say, okay, well, I'm going to go vote now, even though I didn't vote in 2016. And the truth is about these voters is they are more cynical about government and about politics and about the possibility of politics improving their lives than almost anyone. And so I feel like getting these voters out to the polls requires a lot more than just spending money and taking policy positions. I think it takes real organizing in those communities.
Here's the problem I think that Democrats are facing is all the things that young people like, and by the way, I feel super old by theorizing on what young people like, because that's what old people do. But all the things that young people that invigorates them about politics are things that the older establishment in the Democratic Party does not like. The reality is that the younger people that they want to vote like AOC a whole lot more than they like Nancy Pelosi. That's just the reality, right? Because AOC's real and she's authentic. And what they don't get from a lot of these politicians is authenticity, and that's the part that they connect with. And you're not gonna be able to energize people if you're sounding like moms on Facebook. And a lot of these Democrats kind of sound like mom on Facebook, oh, okay. Yeah, because they are, right? Yeah. They're just teach me about that new dance the kids are doing. It's I don't want to hear that shit. So I would say if they know, rather than look inauthentic by trying to act cool and speak the lingo of the young voters, I think the digital campaigns are smart, but they also have to tap people that the young people listen to. So if that means in North Carolina, Kamala Harris, you got to call J. Cole, yes, and ask him to do some campaigning on your behalf. If you're in Atlanta, because that's the other thing that happened with Stacey Abrams. You had Killer Mike, you had you had T.I., you had them mobilizing people, young people who listened to them, and because they co-signed her, they came out and voted. And so, yeah, if that means you got to have an ad with 21 Savage, do it. You know?
I also, I also
love
think
to
it's
see that, by
we
the way.
have two politicians in recent years that have done an unusual job of exciting young voters and non-voters, Barack Obama and Bernie Sanders. And they are ideologically very different, and yet you have these two people who manage...
Different in most ways.
Yeah, many ways different. Different bagel orders, I assume. But
Obama orders locks, hold the bagel.
yeah, no bagel. seven almonds with locks. But I think what they both have in common is they represented change, and they, in everything they did in their campaigns, and continuing to do with Bernie and his campaign, is convince you that they mean what they say and that they genuinely represent a movement seeking the kind of change people want. And they do that with authenticity. They back it with their character. They back it with their policies. They back it with their way of speaking about the country. And I think it's just, we're not doing this in a vacuum. We have examples. We can learn from what people are doing.
And the last thing I'd say on this is, and the other similarity between Sanders and Obama is, Sanders' slogan right now is "Not me, us," which Barack Obama said all the time. Is both of them understood, and I think Elizabeth Warren gets this, I think a lot of the candidates get this right now, is the need to build a movement, right? Is that you have, this election is going to be won, I know this is a cliche, but it is going to be won on the ground in these communities with people knocking on doors. People don't buy television ads as much as they used to anymore. Like, they want to know what their neighbors are thinking, what their friends are thinking, what people in their communities are thinking. So like, when we get to this election, knocking on doors, talking to your neighbors, talking to your friends, that's going to be the way we win this election. That's going to be it.